Hey there, glad you tuned in for this episode of Navigate, where we discuss all things transition related. And whether you're leaving something behind or adjusting to something new, or you're in the middle somewhere and trying to make sense of it all, my hope is that these conversations will provide you with valuable tips and resources to engage with on your unique transition journey. And this is our final episode of 2019, but stay tuned with more to come in 2020. And I can't think of a better way to wrap up this year's series of podcasts than with our guest today. I recently sat down with Dr. Sam Huddleston to have a conversation around the topic of honor. You may be familiar with Peter Drucker's statement that culture eats strategy for breakfast. And while there are many components to a healthy culture within the places we live and serve, honor is certainly an important ingredient. We can have a well thought out strategy with great intentions, but without honor permeating our relationships and positively impacting our own organizational cultures, we are missing the mark. And Dr. Sam Huddleston is the go-to guy for this topic. He's the Assistant Superintendent of the Northern California and Nevada District of the Assemblies of God, where he assists in giving oversight to over 430 churches. He also served as the founding pastor of Lighthouse Covenant Fellowship in Benicia, California from 1993 to 2004, a church that was started in his living room. He served as the lead pastor for 11 and a half years until he was elected to this present position. Dr. Sam holds a master's degree in marriage and family counseling from Azusa Pacific University and a doctorate of ministry degree from Regent University in Virginia. As a teenager, Sam was involved in a crime that had cost him 5 years of his life in prison. And while incarcerated, he surrendered his life to Christ and learned about God's unconditional love. His autobiography, 5 Years to Life, has inspired people across America and throughout the world, giving them hope for a new beginning. And Dr. Sam has shared his testimony with thousands, including government officials, businessmen, colleges, high schools, and prison inmates, reminding them not only with words, but also with his very presence that God has the power to put broken lives and broken relationships back together again. From 1998 to 1994, Dr. Sam served as executive director for Match 2 Prison Outreach. At the time, was the largest and most successful prison visitation program in the nation. He remains the only former prisoner to ever lead a California Department of Corrections program. Sam and his wife Linda reside in Rancho Cordova, California, near their 3 adult children, and they have 13 grandchildren. And you can read Dr. Sam's full bio in the show notes of this episode. Again, thanks for joining, and let's dive into my conversation about honor with Dr. Samuel Huddleston. All right. Well, Pastor Sam, thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate just being able to have this conversation with you today.
Sure.
And I want to just pick your brain a little bit today about how can we as leaders create a culture of honor or help promote a culture of honor in our context, whether that's church, missions, nonprofit ministries, whatever kinds of ways we are serving God's people.
I didn't see it, and sometimes I still don't see it as a culture. I see it more who I am because of who my daddy was.
Okay.
I watched my dad. I mean, honoring to me is just treating people right. Mm. Regardless of how they treat you, it's treating people right. It's a lot of different from respect. See, I might respect you because of your title, your position, you're a teacher, you're this, whatever your title, I might respect you. But there's some folk, I'm not going to honor you. Mm-hmm. Because to honor you means to lift you up, to speak well of you when you're not around. And sometimes I have found my son, when he was young, taught me that lesson. I would tell him how to treat somebody. He said, "Dad, they don't deserve that." Mm. He's like 7, 8 years old. "Dad, they don't deserve that." And honoring is something that a person deserves.
Okay.
Respect is just something, I'm going to give you that because of a position, title, and all the rest.
Yeah.
But I watched my dad, Tim, how he treated people. Mm. And he amazed me. I watched how he treated his pastor. He really honored our pastor growing up. I mean, to the degree that my father was a man of the earth, raised animals, had a little farm. He had a gardening business. If my pastor needed wood, we had chainsaws. We cut wood. We sold wood. Daddy would make sure he had wood. He made sure his lawn was taken care of.
Okay.
I didn't know what he was doing.
Yeah.
As I got older, I realized what he was doing. He was honoring, there's all kind of terms we use now, man of God, I want you to, there's all these terms. Daddy didn't use terms. He just lived the life of a Christian.
Yeah.
So that years later, I was convicted, not so much even by the word of God, but by my father's life.
Yeah.
And it brought me to the foot of the cross. So to me, honoring is just, when I read the Bible, God honored us. He honors us every day. He lets us make our own choices and what have you.
Yeah.
So who am I not to honor someone? Yeah. But I see it over and over and over again where a lot of people, they just don't know what that looks like. And I think sometimes it's because they didn't see it growing up.
Yeah. Okay. So we don't have these examples. We don't have these models in our lives. And I'm just kind of wondering what does that honor look like in context where folks have differing opinions about what honor is and what it means. For example, just as an example, for me, maybe in this culture, and I lived overseas for many years in an Asian context where honoring your elders was like
breathing.
It's
like breathing.
Breathing, yeah. Mm-hmm. And when they got old and needed support and help and care, there was no question they would live with you, or you would live together. Right. There was no question that you would, send them somewhere to be taken care of. Mm-hmm. That's honor. Mm-hmm. Here, maybe someone's idea of honor is, I just need to make sure that they're in a nice care home and well taken care of, and that's honor. Or, so there are differing opinions of honor, and that's culturally, but also within families and within a church context and culture. So,
right.
Yeah. So what are your thoughts on that?
Well, it really does depend a lot on different cultures, ethnicities. I think sometimes it's challenging when you have the different cultures coming together, especially in this day and age where the different cultures are marrying and what have you.
Right,
whereas years ago, and I mean a lot of years ago, normally people married within their culture, so there wasn't a lot of change. But things have changed. Things have really changed. And that's why I don't judge people for how they honor.
Yeah.
I just know that I do the way that I do because of what I saw my dad. Now, in a cultural context, I'll give you an example. Our superintendent, Brett Allen, he and I are as different as the day is long. But that man, I don't know if that man honors me. Mm-hmm. You say, well, how does he do that? Number one, he'll come in my office and ask my opinion of something. He'll ask me to go places with him. He speaks well of me when I'm there, when I'm not. All those are honoring.
Yeah.
Those are ways to honor. I'd been here 15 years. I don't know. I'm not sure we've ever honored an assistant superintendent that is in that. And there's been some been here longer than I, but he honored me at our district minister's renewal. He speaks highly of me. And sometimes I feel like he almost showcases me. And a lot of leaders, they don't know how to do that. Yeah. They're so insecure that they don't know how to honor the people around them. Right. And there's probably not much I wouldn't do for that man because he honors me. He respects me and honors me.
That's good.
And it's very plain. My wife one day, we're in a meeting and getting ready to have dinner. She was standing behind me and she says, "Did I tell you today that I love you?" And I turned around and said, "No." But when I turned around, she was looking at our superintendent.
That's great.
And I realized she said that to him because she has seen how he honors her husband.
Yeah. That's great.
And when it comes to the older people, one of the things my dad did to help me to honor older people, he took us around them. You know, Sundays after church, we went to my grandfather's house, my grandparents' home. Cousins would come over and all the rest. Aunts and uncles would come over. Weekends would all be together at my grandfather's place. I used to tell Linda, when we have grandchildren, I want our place to be the place they all want to come. So they do. My grandchildren, when they walk in the house, they'll give me and my wife a kiss on the cheek. Not every other time. And if they forget, see, their parents, when they were young, they'd want to come in, run upstairs and play, what have you. And their dad or their mother said, did you forget something? So they've taught them. You honor your grandparents.
Yeah.
You listen to your grandparents. It's just, see, it's not something, I'm not sure how to teach it to make that, it's my culture, it's my family.
Yeah.
And then it spreads out from there. Well, this was my family honoring Aunt Jean and Aunt Rita. And even now, when I'm praying for my family, on Thursdays, I pray for all my uncles and aunt. I only have one uncle, one aunt that are still alive. And then I have all my first cousins. There used to be 32 of us, and that has dwindled down by death. I pray for the ones that are here. Mm-hmm. And then I honor the ones who've gone before us. I said, God, I thank you for it. I name all my aunts, my uncles.
Right.
God, because I'm a part of them.
Sure.
And honoring to me sometimes is remembering where you come from.
Yeah.
Is remember you didn't get here by yourself. God didn't just drop you off and say you're on your own. And Reverend Arneson was one of my professors at Bethany.
I see his photo on the wall there.
Oh yeah, man. He befriended me, and he honored me. And I came from a pretty crazy background, but he was one of the few. I don't think he ever saw that.
Yeah.
And I know that because of the way he treated me, the way he respected me, the way he honored me, the way he spoke well of me. And I think those are all attributes that a person can use even in this kind of, to build a culture of honor. You know, whenever I'm at a meeting and I see the superintendent's parents there, we've never had a superintendent who was young enough where his parents were still alive. I feel it my duty to honor them, to say something about them, to let people in the room know that our superintendent didn't just get where he's at. These are the people. There's his son. You know, these are the people that have invested in this man's life to prepare him to be where he's at today.
So honor really starts, and creating a culture of honor, that really starts, as I hear you speaking about it, on the relational level, the family level, the personal level. Mm-hmm. The things that people don't see necessarily out in our public life, you know, in our work context. Hopefully it bleeds over into that, but it starts in those.
I'll tell you a place that I see dishonoring almost on a weekly basis. Saw it yesterday in the church. Everybody stand. Everybody stand. I want you all, let's all stand together. We sing this. You know why that's dishonoring?
Some people can't stand.
Some people can't stand. I was at a meeting a few weeks ago. Major leaders were there. And one of the leaders was in a wheelchair. And he was down front. And every leader that came up said these words. Everybody stand. And I'm sitting there looking at my friend. I wanted to run up and grab the mic and say, excuse me, I'd like to show you something. And I wanted to look right him in the face and say, stand. Stand. Oh, come on, you can do it.
Yeah.
Apparently you can do it because we keep telling you to stand.
Right.
That's so dishonoring.
Yeah.
And we do it sometimes in a cultural context. It's almost like, in our church, and Linda and I pastored, I would bring material that was sent to me, advertising conferences or what have you. And I would put it in front of our staff and I'd say, now who's not invited? That's what do you mean? I said, look at the program, see who's not invited. Now it'd be natural for you not to see a woman's picture and they're promoting a men's conference. That's,
Okay.
But a lot of times when we're promoting stuff, we dishonor other cultures by not putting their pictures out there. And I'm not saying every conference has to look like a collage of humanity.
Sure.
But we need to be intentional. And I think honoring is something that you have to do it intentionally.
Yeah.
I intentionally honor my wife. We've been married 43 years. I try not to miss opening the door for her. My grandsons and my granddaughters, when we're together, I'll say, open the door for your grandmother.
That's good.
Because I want my grandsons to learn how to honor the women in our family. If they can honor the women in our family, I tell them they'll be wrestling. I said, you don't. If you want to wrestle with your little female cousin, she always wins.
Yeah.
And they look at me, I said, but Pop, I said, no, there is no but.
Yeah.
We don't hit ladies. We don't,
right.
And I know that some ladies might hear this and be offended that I would say that to my grandchildren. Well, that's your culture.
Yeah.
I'm not responsible for how you want to raise your little girls
sure.
and grandsons. I'm only responsible for how I want to raise mine.
Yeah.
And it works for our family.
Yeah. Yeah. Good. So when it comes to church leadership and church culture, this phrase, and I'm sure you've heard it before by Peter Drucker, culture eats strategy for breakfast. Mm-hmm. And I was thinking about that in the sense of a culture of honor, just kind of honing in on the honor piece. And I'd like to hear your thoughts around that, because it seems as if we can have awesome strategy, all great intentions around what we're doing in ministry and in the church context. And yet, if this culture of honor isn't there, it's what are we accomplishing, and what is actually the end result of that,
So our church is pretty multi-ethnic.
Yeah.
So I had a youth pastor that I brought on staff. And I said, no. And this is one of the most fatal mistakes that I see new pastors and young pastors make. They come, they have a strategy,
yeah,
they have a dream, they have a vision, and they try to implement it without understanding the culture of the church.
Right.
Every church has a culture.
Which takes time to understand that. Yeah.
If you're in a hurry to do something,
yeah.
Don't become a pastor.
Yeah.
Do not become a pastor.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, don't even become a leader. Because you have to come in and understand what's going on. What has happened before?
Right.
Okay. Who has been here before? And when we started pastoring, I just felt like God put a call in my life to love a group of people.
Mm-hmm.
And we just started loving people.
Yeah.
Didn't have a theme every week. This year our theme is just this, I'm going to do this. We're going to do, my thing was, what are we really going to do what can we do for God? Mm-hmm. What can we really do for God? We can honor him by obeying him. And we can honor him by living a life that doesn't bring shame to his name. To my young youth pastor friend, I said, no, your mistakes are on my ticket. Told him that in front of the board. I said, make sure your mistakes, they're worth being on my ticket. Okay. I'll defend you. I'm going to honor you, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So he calls one of the African-American, he happened to be white. He called an African-American lady's home one time. Yo, what's up? Hey, he leaves a message for her kids. This is Pastor so-and-so, and I just want you to know that blah, 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 blah. The mother calls me up. Says, Pastor, what is wrong with Pastor so-and-so? See, in a black context, she didn't see him as a youth, but he was a pastor.
Mm-hmm.
So he was just trying to be who he was, which in a church context, that's really not that important.
Mm-hmm.
So she says, would you mind if I call him and talk to him? Said, no, not at all. So I met with him first. I said, the mother's going to call you. She's going to give you a spanking. Take it like a man. Then we'll talk about it. Then when we talked about it, I said, what did I tell you about culture?
Yeah.
Who you are is not important. Who we are is important. And so many times I watch pastors come in, they're so busy trying to promote themselves as opposed to promoting the one who took a towel and washed the feet of his disciples.
Yeah, that's good.
If you will love people and wash their feet,
right, you
can and develop a culture of honor where we lift people up. Where we our superintendent, he does that so well. I'll say something about him, and I tell him, you have the gift of deflection. I'll say something about him, and he'll deflect to someone else. I said, Pastor, let's come back to what I just said about you.
Yeah.
This is about you right now. I'm telling you in front of the staff or whomever, and he's uncomfortable and all.
Sure.
And we don't know how to give honor to others because of sometimes our own insecurities.
Right.
Won't allow us to.
Yeah. That's so good. And so much of what you're saying applies to, because a lot of our listeners of this podcast are on the mission field. Mm-hmm. They're serving national churches mm-hmm. abroad. They're working in team contexts mm-hmm. abroad. And so much of that, just it applies because, you get to a mission field. What's the first thing you do? Not step in and say, I'm the answer to all your problems and here's my strategy and I'm going to fix it or I'm going to build this or do this. It's getting to know the people, taking the time to honor that culture.
You know who I saw do this? Missionary Scott Hansen.
Yeah, Scott. Yeah, okay. So I went to Bethany with him.
Okay, yeah. We were in Africa with Scott, uh-huh. and there was this African guy had something, and I said, "Hey, Scott," I said, "Yeah," I said, "I want to buy that. I don't want you to try to deal. Just ask him what he wants." So Scott pulls up. We pull up in our in his vehicle, and he's sitting there talking in Swahili to this guy. Now watch this. I'm observing. Okay,
right.
Do not speak Swahili, but I'm observing. And after about 5 minutes into the conversation, the guy holds up what I really wanted. And now they're negotiating about that. Mm. We leave. I looked at Scott. Honor. Okay, honor. I said, when you first started talking to that guy, you were just being relational, weren't you? You were asking him, hey, what's your name? How you doing?
Right.
He goes, yeah.
Yeah.
See, he honored him first. He honored him by respecting him.
Right.
And then 5 minutes into the conversation, you can see honoring even if you don't understand the language.
Yeah.
And Scott honored him. I just went there. I thought, man, you know what? You're good, brother. Mm. You are really good. Mm-hmm. Mm. And he learned. He didn't learn. I don't know if he learned that in America. Mm-hmm. But by the time when he got to the mission field, as my grandmother would say, they learned him some things.
Yeah.
And I ended up getting the piece that I wanted to buy from this gentleman there in Africa. Because Scott honored him, had a conversation with him. I'm serious. Tim, it blessed the socks off me.
That's awesome.
To watch him.
And, yeah. And he probably got you a good deal in the process, right?
You know what? I don't even know. It didn't matter. It
didn't matter.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah. That's a great example.
Because I'm not going to now dishonor the guy.
Right.
Scott has honored him, and I'm going to dishonor. I'm not paying you that. Tell him I'm not going to, Scott, whatever he says, I'll pay it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, what about, what are some things that might impact honor, whether positively or negatively, whether that be our differences, upbringings, the way we do church, the way we're used to doing church, etc. What are some things we may bring to the table that may impact creating that culture of honor, whether positively or negatively?
How you treat your wife.
Okay, we're going back to family.
It doesn't get beyond how you treat your children.
Yeah.
We had a missionary come to our church. I used to tell the people, when I have a guest, watch the spouse. If they're married, watch the spouse. Mm. If their spouse is not listening, don't you listen. Mm. They got nothing to say. Mm. This guy comes to our church, 2 services. He preached the first service, Tim. Listen, the paint on the wall was coming off the wall. I mean, he knocked it out the park. Next service, I tell the people, you're in for a treat today. Blah, 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 blah. He came up to preach, and I'm telling you, he never got the plane off the landing strip. And I'm going, what is wrong? I mean, it was as different as night and day. And I'm going, what in the world is wrong? And I thought, what's different about this service than the previous service? And I realized, well, his wife's here. And I automatically turned to look at her. She was sitting on the second front row, cleaning her fingernails. Mm. And I thought, oh, he's not living this thing. Mm. He preached a message, but he's not living it. And what I should have done, because the people are all looking at me, and what I should have done was just stop, let's have prayer, and took over.
Yeah.
But I let him, he stumbled through it. And then afterwards, we went out to eat dinner at these people's houses, and it all came out.
Yeah.
Man, I mean, they weren't even trying to be civil. It was really bad. Mm. So, watch how a person treats their, you can watch how people honor those that are close to them. You can't do something in public that you don't do at home.
Yeah.
Sitting in my office one day, looked out the window, and this man gets out of his car, has 3 daughters, 3 young daughters, single dad. And he's trying to rush them, and he's, I'm watching him. He's been very insensitive to them. So then I go, I'm going to run downstairs. I just wanted to see how he would respond to the women in the church when he walked in. I'm telling you, he was a totally different man. And I wanted to go up to him, and I didn't, and say, what happened to the guy that was in the parking lot?
Right.
That treated his daughters, disrespectfully, dishonoring, but now you want to come in here and...
Yeah.
It's the family. It's people that are around you. It's people that you live with. It's people that you work with. Yeah. I honor and treat people where I work in this district office the way that I do because of this.
I love that, Pastor Sam.
If they ever meet my grandchildren and need help, I want them to say, who's your grandfather? Because they'll remember how I honor them.
That's great. Yeah, I love what you're saying, Pastor Sam. And I have to give a shout out to Pastor Don Pritchard, who's our lead pastor up in Diamond Springs.
He's a great man.
When I came on board a few years ago, we just fresh off the boat, as it were. Yeah. We come back from our overseas assignment, and we're trying to plug back into not only just become, learning how to be Americans again, but plugging into church leadership and ministry, and trying to navigate all that. And he invited us on the staff, but he not only invited us on the staff to work with him and serve with him. He does a great job at honoring us and saying these guys. He says things about our experience on the mission field and how what we bring to the table, because you can feel really insecure when you're 25 years on the mission field and trying to come back and figure it all out in the church, in the U.S. church context. But he has said a lot of things publicly and done a lot of things to help my wife and I to feel honored and invited into that.
See, it's the same kind of a context. Okay? Terry Inman, Pastor Terry Inman?
Yeah.
He was pastoring in Vallejo, asked me to come meet with him. His first full-time ministerial position. He goes, I notice that I have minorities that come to my church. Mm-hmm. He's pastoring the Hill in Vallejo at the time, his church on the Hill. And he said, I noticed they look around. And I started asking myself, what are they looking for? He said, they don't see anybody on the platform or in leadership that looks like them. He said, would you come over and help me? He honored the people that were there, and he honored me. Very honest, very straightforward. And he put me in a context that I had never been in before, and then helped me.
That's great. Yeah.
He helped me. He honored me. Yeah. And then he honored the people that had come, and he was also honoring the people that were going to come. Mm-hmm. And now if you go to the Hill, Pastor Scott Peterson's been there for years. It is an incredible context. But a lot of people, what they want, they're not willing to pay the price to get it. Mm-hmm. So you come back from the mission field. Right. You're trying to you're just trying to figure out what happened all those years I was gone. Yeah. Okay. Basically, you're put in the context you were used to before, but he honored you. I was put in a context I'd never been before, and it was an honoring opportunity that helped me to be where I'm at today by a man who had a father who was a missionary in Japan. Yeah. So he learned how to honor. He passed it on to his son. Mm-hmm. His son now is giving it to his 7 sons, how to honor people, respect people. And I look back at the honor that man gave me, allowing me to preach. I'd preach. He would say things about me. See, honoring, sometimes it's a feeling. I mean, he would say things about me in public that were almost, I used to think, man, I'm so glad my skin is dark, because people would see I would be blushing. And then he made me want to give my all to serve him. Pastor Allen makes me want to give my all to serve alongside him because of honor. Mm-hmm. I'd like to think that my wife, one of the reasons, probably not the main reason, but one of the reasons that we've been together 43 years is from our first date. I've tried to honor her by opening up the door. Opening up a door to some people, it seems like it's very small, but it's my way of saying I love you, I appreciate you. And the older we have become, the more important that has become to me. To honor my wife.
Yeah, that's good.
I want my granddaughters to see me honoring their grandmother. I want my grandsons. My sons and daughters saw it. They saw it.
Yeah.
In fact, one of my sons, when he was joining the church years ago, he was asked the question, why do you want to join this church? And his response is probably the greatest thing anyone's ever said about me. He said, I want to be a part of a church where I know that the man who preaches on Sunday practices what he preaches at home.
It's good.
It's honoring.
Yeah.
See, it's happening in our fellowship.
Yeah.
You know, years ago, our leadership all looked a certain way.
Right.
And now, the executive presbytery of our fellowship, it's like there's 21 people making the decisions and 9 of them. And it's honoring to watch our people. You understand? You can't.
Right.
It's just to watch the decisions that the people who comprise our fellowship are making. Native American, 3 African Americans, 3 women, Puerto Rican, because that's our fellowship. So when you start putting people in high levels of positions who look like and comprise our fellowship, you're telling all those people, we honor you.
Yeah. Yeah.
We honor you, not just as tokens.
Yeah.
Not just because we have 2 of you on our elder board, or one of you is the head usher in the church, or one of you has the awesome privilege of making sure the place is clean.
Right.
But we honor you by putting you in positions of authority where you can make decisions and we can mix up the conversation. I see a lot of people, they don't want people around them who are different.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like, do you really like just a plain lettuce salad?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't care what kind of dressing you put on it. You know, I kind of like all the other ingredients. I like sometimes bell pepper, and I like celery, and I like onion, and I like tomato. I love avocado.
Yeah.
Well, that's the body of Christ.
Yeah.
When we all kind of start blending this thing together, learning from each other, listening to each other, arguing with each other, learning how to disagree, but we do so in a way that we don't put somebody down. We don't start calling them names. We honor them because of who they are.
Yeah.
Or as Dr. King would say, not the color of their skin, but the content of their character.
That's good. And so in some of our more rural churches, it is not ethnically diverse.
But it is diverse.
But it's diverse.
Now, you know why? I don't care if everybody in there is white, black, brown, green, turquoise. You're going to have some with money, some that don't have a lot of money, some that are single, some that are married, some that are, and you just go. So every context is diverse. It's beyond the color.
Right.
It's beyond that.
So every context is an opportunity to create a culture of honor.
Every context.
Love that. Yeah.
Because there's always going to be somebody different than you.
Good.
Yeah. Always.
Yeah. So what about, we talk a lot on this podcast about transition and how to navigate transition. And transition in churches is a huge deal and can go really well.
You're talking about for leaders.
Yeah, like when leaders transition, when leadership transitions, they get a new pastor or bring new staff. That can either go really well or really poorly. So what are some areas around this? And one thing that we help, my wife and I help missionaries transition a lot. And we have this acronym that we use to help them, this is kind of pre-transition, to help them transition to the next thing, whether they're coming back to the States, back to their home country, or they're going to another field, they're going to another place. And this acronym is RAFT, R-A-F-T. So build your raft while you're transitioning. And so the R is reconciliation. Make sure your relationships are in order. There's, if you need to reconcile with anybody, do it. The A is affirmation. And we've been talking about some of this. Affirm those that are important in your life and and the other thing is give other people the opportunity to affirm you. And that was big when we left Tajikistan, after so many years serving there, we had to, even though it felt uncomfortable times, we had to let the our national friends there do it their way of affirming us, and they'd throw parties or have a long conversation or whatever it was. And then the F was farewells, how to say your goodbyes well, and just talking about the farewells. And then the T in that is think destination. Yeah, we need to be thinking ahead, thinking forward, but we can't do that without first doing these other 3 things and making sure that we transition well or leave well.
And so I was thinking about that. We use that a lot in the missions context, but a lot of it applies to transition in general, and could be very helpful for pastors that are retiring or transitioning, church boards that are part of that process. So what are some thoughts around, especially when it comes to transition and honoring in the transition process?
Okay, so our new general secretary,
Yeah.
Donna Barrett.
Uh-huh.
Donna Barrett comes to general council in Florida this past August. Her election is confirmed. She stands up and she says, first woman in one of our top leadership positions in the fellowship. She says, my favorite line of the whole general council, she says, I know that you have recognized the obvious. And I'm just sitting there going, yeah, you're a woman. I'm saying this in my own head, which everybody else is saying. And then she says this, I'm left-handed. Oh, God. Oh, man, it was just great. So what happens is, in the context of transition, we don't talk about the obvious. So I used to stand up and say, I've never pastored a church like this before.
Mm-hmm.
And it would be totally different if it was all black or if it was all white. But it's different. We have Native Americans, we have whites, we have blacks, we have Asians, we have singles, we have marrieds, we have all of this here.
Mm.
And then I would say this, I need you to help me. I need you to help me. My friend, his name is Claude. Claude was the warden of one of our penal institutions, $200 million budget.
Wow.
His first day on the job, he went around and met with the high-ranking people because he had never worked inside of an institution before. And he said this, my name is Claude. I'm the new warden. Never been a warden before, never worked in an institution before. I want to be a good warden. I'm asking you to help me.
It's good.
That's the obvious.
Yeah.
The obvious, you get to a church, you're honest. A lot of leaders are almost afraid to be honest. I used to tell the people in our church, I was talking about it yesterday, you folk don't have any idea how blessed you are that I'm the youngest person on this board. And I would honor my board members by listening. In fact, one of them one day, he's a retired colonel in the military. I've been everywhere except the military, okay? He served in the military. I served too, differently. He said one day to me, honor. I said, Pastor. I said, yeah. He says, you listen to us. That's how you know I listen to you. He said, you listen to us. I said, how do you know I listen to you? He said, because sometimes on Sunday mornings, we hear our words coming out of your mouth.
Ah, that's good.
Honoring.
Yeah.
Honoring.
Right.
So in a transitional context, you learn to listen. You learn, and especially to the older ones. Church I was in yesterday, he honors the older people there. You said, well, how do you know? I said, because they sing hymns. And here's the thing. Every church can sing hymns today.
Right.
You know why? They're putting the words on the screen and the young people don't even know what they are.
Right.
Unless you say something. So now you got the old people sitting out there.
Mm-hmm.
And one guy was just talking about, I was listening to him the other day, talking about all the things they're doing in the church during the time when money was going down in other churches. And he said, someone asked him, how did you do this? He said, well, we sing hymns. We sing where the money is.
Yeah.
And you have to learn to be the word is intentional. Mm-hmm. I go into when I came here, went to the staff meeting, told the people in there, I said, I've been leading all my life. Now I get to be the number 2 man. It's been a while. I've been leading this church. I was the president of this organization. So probably the last almost 20 years, I've been the head person. In fact, I used to have a cartoon on my desk. It was a dog sled. And the caption underneath says, unless you're the lead dog, the view never changes. I said, I'm not the lead dog. I said, but you know what? I'm going to do a good job here. And I said, would you like to know why? They said, well, why? And I started calling out the names of the people that have been here a long time. And I said, you're going to help me. Mm-hmm. I've watched you. I've been here too long, but I noticed you do this really well. You're going to help me. And you're going to help me.
Yeah.
So you humble yourself.
Yeah.
And you're honest.
Right.
It can help you through any major transition.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, and I hear you saying too, you're observant. You're watching people who are really going to help you in this transition and what they bring to that.
And you tell them that.
And you tell them.
I should tell the people, I said, you know what? I think I'm good at what I'm doing, blah, 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 blah. Mm-hmm. But if I write a letter, any of you see where I maybe could have said it differently, challenge me on it.
Mm-hmm.
I came here. I've never had friends growing up from different, like Samoan, Fijian, Tongan, the islanders. Not in the little town I grew up in. So when I came here, I started telling them when I would meet with them, I have no idea what your culture is like. If I do something that's offensive to your culture and you don't tell me and I find out about it, I'm going to be upset with you. Mm-hmm. I need you to help me. I need you to help me. So one day, after a while, they saw I was for real. And one day, one of the guys says, "Hey, can I talk to you for a moment?" I said, "Sure, Pastor." He says, sometimes when you call us, you wave your arm. You say, "Hey, come here." I said, "Yeah." He says, "Don't do that to us." I said, "Why is that?" He goes, "That's how we call our dogs." Mm. And I looked at him and I smiled. I said, "Thank you."
Thank you. Yeah.
Honoring.
Yeah.
I honored him.
Yeah.
By saying that to them. And said it enough times, wasn't just one time. Said it enough times where they believed me. And then when he told me, I'll never forget, Tim, he just stood there looking at me. Because he wanted to see what my reaction was, and I started smiling. And I just gave him a little hug. I said, "Thanks. Thank you for helping me."
That's great. Yeah. So being honest and inviting truthfulness into the conversation is so important in that. So what about whether it's retirement or just a pastor is transitioning out of a church? How can that be done in the most positive, affirming way so that there is a healthy transition? Because a lot of our transitions, brand new person's going to come in who has no history or a relationship with these people. Sometimes it's someone is raised up in-house, but oftentimes it's someone with no background or history, very different people. So how do you?
I think part of it becomes natural for me, but I think what a person has to do is they go to a new context. When I came here, it was a very new context. Yeah. I knew some of the people, most of them I didn't know. When I went to become the executive director of a statewide organization 2 years ago, I didn't know the people.
Yeah.
So the first thing I tried to do was learn their stories. Mm-hmm. If I know Dick Foth was the president of Bethany when I was a student there. See, the story never changes.
Right.
You don't ask people, "So what do you do?" You don't ask them, "What do you do?" You ask them, "Where are you from?" You can only be from one place. Mm-hmm. You can only be born in one. And then they say, "Well, I'm from a lot of places." Well, then I look at them and say, "Where were you born?" "Were you born in a lot of?"
Yeah, that sounds like a Dick Foth strategy right there. And
so when you find some things out about them, it will help you to relate better to them. So when I come, even if a person says, "I've been in it for 20 years, really, where were you born?" "Well, what do you mean? Where were you born?" "Were you born in this?" "No, I'm from New York." "Really? Tell me your journey, how you got to Modesto."
Yeah.
And it tells you a whole lot. So now all of a sudden, they believe you're interested in them.
Right.
When a person believes you're interested in them, there's not much they won't do to help you succeed.
That's good.
So if you go in there, humble yourself, listen, and ask good questions. When I came here, Pastor Brett Allen was the youth person. He said, "As far as you, I spent my first 2 years kind of traveling around asking questions." So you know what I did? Because he was a proven entity, not knowing that a few years later that he would be my boss, really, as a superintendent. Mm-hmm. I just did what he told. I'd go around asking questions. My pastors, "How you doing? How long you been?" I heard some of the most incredible stories, journeys of individuals, and especially those that have been in their positions a long time. I heard about hurt. I heard about pain. I heard about joys. Yeah. But it helped forge me as a leader into this position that I'm in.
That's good. Yeah. That's good. Awesome. Well, just as we wrap up here, Pastor Sam.
Well, let me just say this. Yeah. But also when a person is transitioning out, you party. I've had people that I've had to terminate, but I still celebrated when they were leaving. Okay. Because that's who I am.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I wanted our church to reflect who I am in light of who Jesus is.
That's good. So even when the transition is hard.
Even when it's hard.
Yeah.
Even when it's hard, I'm not going to change. Yeah. I had board members, "We're not going to do this for them. We're not going to." I said, "Oh, no, we are. Yeah. I'm the pastor here. We're going to do that."
That's good.
And then afterwards, they would come back and say, "Pastor, thank you for making this. Honor that person." Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, no, we're going to honor them.
Right.
We're going to honor them.
Find ways to celebrate.
There are always ways to celebrate.
Yeah.
Good. And we don't do that enough. That was another thing that our superintendent brings to this store. He loves, listen, he gives away a Gumby Award. He will catch you doing something really good and embarrass you in front of the whole staff. And it's just, a Gumby, that little thing. And he gives you a Gumby award because what Gumby does is if you take it out of the package, it's bendable. And it's pliable and he says that's who you are, and then he'll tell you what you've done well. And I've seen people literally cry, and you can tell who's used to being honored. Sometimes when we have birthday parties at my home for my children, we take our time to go around the room and say, now, tell us what you love about your cousin, about your brother, about your... And of course it always ends up with a room full of tears. Now, don't wait. We're not going to wait till we die. We're going to do it now.
Amen. Yeah.
My dad did it to us. Affirming. It's the most incredible way to honor someone. Affirm the good in them.
That's good. Yeah. Great. Yeah. Well, as we wrap up this conversation, I know we could talk longer. We might have to have a part 2 down the road here. But any last words of encouragement for those who may be in smack dab in the middle of a transition? Maybe it's a hard transition. What are some words that you could encourage us with?
I'm reading this book now by Wayne Cadero, pastors in Hawaii.
Yeah,
incredible book called The Divine Mentor.
Okay,
and he talks about finding a Bible character,
right,
and making that person like a mentor for you. And if I was in the middle of a transitional season, I'd find me a Bible character that has been through transition, and I would study them. There's many of them.
Yeah.
I'd study Joseph. I'd study Daniel. I'd study Ruth. I'd study Esther. And they will become my mentor through this transitional season.
That's good. I like that.
And I would encourage them to do that, because if you can be strengthened and encouraged by the word of God, you'll make it.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of books out here, a lot of other things out here, but they don't have an eternal value, but the word of God. Tim could find you a hero and a mentor. Right. And I mean, don't just read about them. Study what they experienced and how they transitioned in and out. It'll encourage your heart.
That's great. Well, I know there's, again, a lot more we could talk about. And there's still, I'm sure you see a lot of areas that we still need to overcome, both in our in our movement, the broader church, Christian community. I love what God is doing, though, in Sacramento. So even as you look outside of our, outside of Assemblies of God and into the broader church community, that's been one thing that's really been highlighted for me, and I've been impressed with as I enter back into this culture, is seeing the unity and what God is doing here in this broader community of Northern California, and I'm excited to be a part of it. So excited to be serving with you.
Thank you.
And thank you for your leadership and in our district, and appreciate so much of what you are doing, and Pastor Brett, again, all the things you say about him, I just say amen to that, because so many good things happen, and my wife and I just love your hearts and the leadership.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks again, Pastor Sam.
Thank you.
I don't know about you, but I know that I've been challenged both by Dr. Sam's example and his words today. Such a great reminder that honor doesn't have to be complicated. It's the little things we do and say while nobody's watching. It's what we live out in our private lives that speaks volumes and builds a culture of honor, brick upon brick. The word integrity stands out to me. Transition seasons are times when we really need to be intentional in this area of honor. How we leave a place of ministry and how we enter a new one is so crucial. If you're in the middle of a challenging transition, let me encourage you to reach out for support. Book a discovery call with me at EncompassLifeCoaching.com to learn more about how working with a coach can help make your transition a success. Well, that wraps up Navigate for 2019, and I've been your host, Tim Austin, and if this has been helpful to you, would you mind rating the podcast, writing a review, and sharing on social media? And of course, you can subscribe so that you're sure to get in on the next episode, and have a great Christmas celebrating our Savior's birth, and I'll catch you in the new year.